AskReddit by Santa Monsanto. Serious, what crime do you really want to see solved and justice served? Attention, serious, tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. https://www.reddit.com/r/wiki/index-wiki_rule_6 in any comment parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please, contact the moderators of this subreddit. Message compose $?to =r AskReddit if you have any questions or concerns. Bardstown KY is a little town with a ton of distilleries and old people. On the surface, it's a lovely little place. Below the surface, there's been several unsolved murders. A police officer was ambushed on his way home, and the hit is said to have been done professionally. A woman named Crystal Rogers went missing. A mother and daughter were brutally murdered in their home. There's crooked cops, corruption in the city government, and the FBI is investigating cover-ups. It's all very interesting, but there aren't any clear answers. Crystal Rogers' boyfriend killed her, no question. My best friend, Sean Bach, was murdered in a hit-and-run in Albuquerque, NM just a few years ago. I want to find the pose that killed him more than anything. Fuck whoever did this. I hope they never have a moment of peace. The disappearance of Timothy Pitson in Illinois, 2011. His father dropped him off at school. His mother picked him up shortly after. She took him on a road trip to his favorite places. She called family and let them know they were safe. The mother was found dead by suicide in a hotel room a couple of days later, but the child was nowhere to be found. She left a note saying that Timothy was safe and would never be found. H1203. That has to be the creepiest thing I've ever read. Like, where would he be? What him safe? Adam Walsh was a boy abducted from a Sears in Florida in 1981. They later found his decapitated head but never his body. The police had a suspect but botched the investigation. No one was ever charged. R.I.P. little guy. His dad is a great advocate for solving crimes. He hosted America's Most Wanted for many years. KK's Corner triple homicide. 3 victims shot execution style in the convenience store's cooler and amp, made to believe it was a robbery gone wrong, 1 man in prison. The sheriff at the time was corrupt along with many high-ranking officials. Sheriff's son was a well-known drug dealer and amp bragged about the crime. One of the victims was speaking out about a murder made to look like a suicide and amp. She was shot to shut her up. And if I remember correctly, the one guy in prison has been there 4 years and won't roll on the others. Makes you wonder what he knows. Might be cheating, but all 3 have to be rolled into one. John David Gorsh, https://en.m.wiki.org/wiki/disappearance_John_goes 12, gone missing delivering the paper in Des Moines, Iowa on the 5th of September, 1982. Eugene Martin, 13, gone missing delivering the paper in Des Moines, Iowa on the 12th of August, 1984. Mark Allen, 13, gone missing heading to a friend's house in Des Moines, Iowa on the 29th of March, 1986. The ages of the boys and the timings seem too similar. I used to think being found dead was rough. The idea that you'll never know is especially harder on their families. There's cases where people remain optimistic, but some relented to the idea that their loved ones aren't ever coming back. People are so fucked up to one another. Whoever did the Tylenol murders. For those who don't know, in 1982, there were a series of mysterious deaths. It was later discovered these deaths had been caused by the Tylenol, which had been swapped out for cyanide. This was one of the main reasons bottles nowadays have the seal that says "do not buy if broken." Edit: the Tylenol murders are the reason bottles nowadays have seals to prevent tampering. 18 U.S.C. 1365 was enacted in 1983 as a result of the Tylenol murders, and if found guilty, you could face 5-20 years if someone got hurt and life if someone died. They've got a whole wave of protections for consumers because of this, and it's definitely one I'd like to find out who did it. What was the reason? On the 18th of May, 2021, my mom called me screaming. I was on my way to a DRS appointment, so I was already in the car. I couldn't understand her, but my first thought was that she had an intruder in her home, and he was killing her. Then I finally understood her saying "Matarana hermano," meaning, "Thief killed my brother." I thought surely there's been a mistake. But her voice said it all. It was true. I go to her house and she's losing it. Over time we find out that he'd been stabbed over 37 times. He'd been in his PJs and had tried to hide in his restroom by the signs of struggle and blood-stained doors. Police unfortunately have done nothing. His phone was nowhere to be found. My mom is a mess. Her best friend's life was taken from him. I wish he was here. The only thing we can do is find justice for him. I wish we knew who was behind it. That's horrible. I'm so sorry. Jason Landry, a Texas State student who disappeared. His car was found crashed and abandoned in Luling, TX. His clothes were found in the road, his wallet and phone were left in the vehicle, but no sign of Jason. I always thought that it was a case of man crashed his car, got delirious from brain trauma and died from his wounds. But the more I find out about the case, the less and less I believe in a straightforward answer. The disappearance of the Springfield Three. In the early morning hours of the 7th of June, 1992, these three women, Cheryl Levitt, 47, her daughter Susan Susie Streeter, 19, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall, 18, all vanished from Cheryl and Susie's home following a night of fun and partying. All their personal belongings, their cars, purses, and the little dog was left behind. The front porch light's glass globe was broken and there was a weird message of the answering machine that accidentally got deleted. Yeah, that was a weird one. It is complicated by there being something like half a dozen serial killers whose circumstantial evidence placed in the area at the time of the disappearances. This may not be a famous case, but in my country, there was this 16-year-old girl who was found in a vacant lot. She was raped and stabbed to death. Her face was skinned and an autopsy also revealed that her tongue, trachea, esophagus, parts of her neck, and her right ear were missing. There were alleged suspects, but it was never known who really did it to her. This happened in 2019. WTF. That's horrible. Where did this happen? Murder of Tristan Brubach. He was a 13-year-old boy from Germany, killed in a brutal attack during the day and mutilated. The monster of Florence murdered several couples in Italy during the 70s-80s. When I opened the thread, I immediately wrote down Tristan. It still scares me. I'm just 5 years younger and my grandparents lived close to Hutch's railway station when it happened. Also, some teenagers actually saw the murder and I remember the voice recording of that man who called police and told them that he killed him, or the security camera recordings in the subway station where you can see Tristan with a man who's probably his murderer. The whole story is just shocking and I get insane goosebumps 25 years later. R.I.P. Tristan. Where is Shirley Miscavige? That's because everyone's too scared to take on the Scientologists. I think they've got way more power and influence than people realize, and that's been allowed to happen unfortunately. Jennifer Keese. She went missing in Florida, then authorities found her car had been abandoned and moved. They have a photo of the suspect moving her car, but his face is obscured by a fence. She's never been seen again. Brian Schaffer, the guy who walked into a bar in Ohio and was never seen leaving and was never heard from again. What did Scott Peterson do to Lacey Peterson? Jennifer K's case has driven me nuts for years. That one piece of video footage with the guy's face being covered by the fence. Assuming it was a random construction worker who was working around her apartment building at that time. Back at the beginning of 2009, a young 17-year-old girl, https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/murder_martyr_del_castillo didn't come back to her house after going out with her ex-BF to just chat. Until this day, there's no cause of death because there's no body and there's been 7 different versions given by the one considered guilty. The other people arrested involved minors and close friends of her. Thanks to one of the reporter involved since the beginning of the case and who still pursues the truth, along with a documentary published on Netflix, https://www.netflix.com/title/8130617 the case have been reopened. I really hope you are finally found and have justice served, martyr. This is the one that every young person from Spain would choose, but it's more or less clear. But Alcazar. 3 girls kidnapped and tortured. Nothing clear in that case. The University of Idaho murders. I am just reading about this for the first time. The idea of waking up in the same house where 4 of your friends were murdered and realizing you slept through it is one of the most horrifying things to me. It's all horrifying. I hope a suspect is found. Would be nice to get Epstein's list and put all those assholes in jail. This is top of my list as well. Epstein and Maxwell were terrible people. But supply requires demand. I want to know who was on the other end. The fact that most of the victims also won't give up names tells you how afraid they are to out these powerful people. Epstein's client list. We literally watch the most powerful people in the world almost get caught, en masse, being a bunch of pedophiles, rapists, and sex traffickers. And yet that list has not been made public? That's the biggest crime that no one ever talks about anymore. I feel like a lot of people have this crime present in their minds and talk about it occasionally, it's just that we don't know what to do about it. Like the Panama thing. But plenty of us are enraged by this. If someone found a way to do something about it. At a degree. So many questions and unsettling details about this case. Deleted. All of Ghislaine Maxwell S. and Jeffrey Epstein's clients named, shamed and brought to justice. My aunt's murder. She was a grade school teacher and was run down by a car in front of her students. We all suspect her husband, but he never got convicted. This was going on 12 or 13 years ago now. The husband was arrested twice but there was never enough to fully convict, so he got off free. He hit her with a car. She hit her head on a nearby tree. Car sped off. She died the next day in the hospital. Still technically an unsolved murder. Former co-worker of mine went missing years ago. They never found her. Everyone knows it was her boyfriend. And that she's dead. Her car was just left in a parking lot with a flat tire. Somehow, despite everyone in town knowing what basically happened, nothing ever came of it. I'd like to see justice for her and her family. John Bennett Ramsey. She was 6 years old when murdered in her own home at Christmas, 1996. Police incompetence, salacious speculation, long weirdly specific ransom note, and DNA evidence which was never tested. So many inconsistencies. The murders of Barry and Honey Sherman, pharmaceutical billionaires who were found dead in a suspicious way in their mansion. The Toronto police bungled the case and it seems like it might never be solved. It intrigues me because who did it? A lot of talk about it being a hit from a rival drug company, even their own son. My dad works in Toronto. He's convinced it's because they were involved in organized crime. Kyron Horman. I still think about it all the time. My sister is the same age as him and I remember driving past a giant missing poster every day off of 26 and feeling heartbroken every time I saw his little face. A girl from my hometown, who graduated high school with me, was groomed by police officers throughout her teen years. Almost 3 years ago, she was found dead in her apartment, pregnant with what she said was the cop's baby, although he denied it. He was the last person seen in her apartment. But her death, investigated by the very police force that groomed her, was ruled as a suicide. I don't believe that for a second. I think she was either murdered or it was a coerced suicide. I think everyone has wanted answers from the beginning, but as more and more from the investigation has come out, there have just been more and more questions to need answers for. Isn't there a podcast right now that's actively investigating this particular incident, and they're finding rampant corruption within the whole legal system in the county and even state? There is a famous Talwa case in India where a 16-year-old girl was killed along with a servant in a house, and there is no clue who did that. The case is still unsolved. There is a Bollywood film Talwas made on the incident. In Finland there was this case last winter where 3 teenagers bullied and tortured their friend to death extremely brutally. This act included breaking every rib bone, urinating on victim, steel pipe in anus and firecrackers to testicles, and leaving victim naked in snow in Finnish winter night. Of course the boys are in jail now, but because they are minors and first timers they all serve about 4 years in jail and get new identities. Identities are even now not public, but internet knows. That is not justice, that is complete bullshit. I heard of a different case that I'm pretty sure was in Finland. A guy had a crush on a girl that she didn't reciprocate, so he ultimately murdered her boyfriend. Premeditated and very gruesome, but only got a few years for it. Finland doesn't seem to have very strict penalties for murder at all. It's truly appalling. The murder of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme 1986. Crazy that it's still a mystery. Michelle Parker, a mother who is missing and still not found. She once waited on me and my friends at the bar she worked at. Also Jennifer Kess, who is also missing. Both of these cases happened in Orlando. That abhorrent human being Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and not a single rich powerful man who visited Jeffrey Epstein's child trafficking sex island has been named or brought to justice. Even if she is revealing names, nothing is being done about it. It's sick and twisted. On a similar note, the Panama Papers were released years ago and nothing was done to see justice served. The rich and powerful get off with the most disgusting crimes, which are an affront to humanity and contribute to the downfall of our species. 2008 financial crisis. Instead, in the UK we have many of the perpetrators in government making laws. Same in the US. Some of the companies had to pay a settlement, but virtually all the perpetrators were not punished, and many continued on with their careers without a hitch. The Soda Children disappearance. https://en.m.wiki.org/soda_children_disappearance Author, Beaumont Children Disappearance. https://en.m.wiki.org/wiki/disappearance_the_Beaumont_children. Any missing child crime, really? There was a woman named Connie Bolter who was found brutally murdered in her home in 2006. For the longest time, the theory was that the president of a local bank, which she worked at, was behind it in some capacity. The rumor was that she had uncovered some pretty significant fraud and was going to expose it, blow the whistle, but was killed before she could do so. The bank president ended up being cleared, no word on how they cleared him, and there's been nothing since. I've been following this case since it happened and would love to see it solved. The abduction of Madeleine McCann. Background info on case. On the 3rd of May 2007 she disappeared from her hotel room at the Ocean Club Resort in the Portuguese Algarve. She was only 3 years old at the time and she was taken from her bed even though her twin siblings were in the cot next to her and they were left as they were. Her parents were under suspicion but removed from the suspect list in 2008, although many people still suspect it was them for multiple reasons. It has been 15 years and she is still missing, and Christian Bruckner is the top suspect in the case, but no charges have been pressed yet. Those 4 poor college students stabbed to death in their house in Moscow, Idaho last month. The John Bennett Ramsey murder. Yeah, this case is so interesting because of how well documented it is. Shaquilla Robinson. Zodiac killer crime. Those assholes who are shooting up power stations during record low temps. I wish we could find out what actually happened to Maura Murray. I have a suspicion either she was taken away or they missed her body. I've read numerous stories in the past week of bodies being missed. And I learned from the murder of Kaylee Anthony that bodies can become part of the landscape fairly quickly, and they found Kaylee just in time because a little longer and they probably would have never. Not solved since we all know who's at fault, but trial and justice for the tragedy that was allowed to happen at Uvalde. Throw the book at each and every adult who allowed those kids and teachers to die. Kaylee Anthony's death and the mom prosecuted properly, not a whole Netflix series. I just saw a video on YouTube on Casey Anthony. How anyone on the planet Earth could have heard all the evidence and go, ah, yeah, this Casey sounds like a great mother who definitely didn't kill her daughter, should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. To local ones to me, Ray Gricker, DA that went missing. Car and laptop were found but the laptop was missing the hard drive. Also, a local lawyer's wife went missing years ago. The lawyer had ties to Ray Gricker, obviously. Unsolved Mysteries episode. Guy's girlfriend calls him late at night saying she's being stalked. Someone's following her in their car. She's calling from a phone booth. She's talking to her boyfriend when the car pulls up beside her own car in the parking lot, a space away from her in the booth. Suddenly she's screaming on the other end of the line. Her boyfriend rushes out of the house, jumps in his truck and speeds off to her location. While on the road he sees an oncoming vehicle. As he passes he realizes his girlfriend is in the truck. He sees her. She's screaming for his help. He turns his truck around in a fury to chase down the other truck. But then his truck stalls. He can't follow. The stalker's truck drives off. His girlfriend is never found. This reenactment is terrifying. The last time I read up on this it was unsolved still. Also, I would love for John Bennett Ramsey's murder to be solved. Edit. The story I didn't describe well is told much better here. https://unsolvedmysteries.fandom.com/wiki/Angela_Hammond. Wow, I have never heard of this one, but for some reason it scared me a lot. I can't imagine how helpless her boyfriend felt. Scary world. The Black Dahlia murder. Totally. AKA Elizabeth Short, she suffered a horrific death. Amy Mihaljevic. She was a 10-year-old girl who was kidnapped, potentially raped and definitely murdered near Cleveland, Ohio, us, where I grew up. We were about the same age and as a kid, that story aged me. Still just feel awful for her and her loved ones. Deleted. The cold case murder of my baby sister. She was born at home. Later found stabbed to death and tossed in a dumpster. My parents are the prime suspects. Unfortunately, as far as justice goes, my mother died 4 years too early of the DNA proof and my father is nowhere to be seen. My sister would be 25. Deleted.